on, but if not, they might miss a bit of the intro. It's all good. I feel so much energy right now, everybody introducing themselves and just the amount of people joining. I'm so, so, so happy. I feel like we've been anticipating this day. So welcome everybody to the first session of our summer school for Gaza. Please introduce yourselves in the chat like you have been. If you want to put your name, where you're joining us from, then please do. But also please remember our norms, whether it's in the chat or whether we're sharing, to just be respectful, be kind, be curious, and, be ready to take action as always. I'm Noor. I'm Code Pink's Palestine campaigner. Some of you might know me from Missing Piece Mondays. It was a call that we did at this time bi-weekly before today, because now we're doing our summer school. So if you're from Missing Piece Mondays, please let me know in the chat too. I really loved our calls, and I hope you guys are here. I'm going to be co-hosting these sessions with Danica. Danica, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Danica. I'm Code Pink's national co-director. I'm based out of Chicago. I saw a bunch of people introduce themselves in the chat as from Chicago, and I didn't recognize everyone's name. So that's gotta change. This Gaza Summer School is just a piece of our Summer of Love for Gaza this summer. So this space is where we learn how to engage locally wherever we may be. But since you all said you're from Chicago and a bunch of places in the Midwest, I do want to remind people that we will be at the Democratic National Conventions in August and the Republican National Convention in July. That one's in Milwaukee, and the Democratic one in August is in Chicago. Please go to our events page and RSVP and sign up to be at the RNC and DNC with us, to escalate for Gaza this summer if you're able to. Yeah, I'm super excited for the summer school. Thank you so much for coming to our first session. And I'll pass it back to Noor.
Thanks so much, Danica. Just to give you guys a reminder, if you couldn't tell, we're recording and live streaming this. So just something to keep in mind through these calls. There will be some parts of some sessions where we won't be recording. We'll let you know when that happens. But just because we are recording, if you come off mute and you talk, you'll pop up in the live stream. So fair warning, you probably don't want to do that. So the way these are going to go is we're going to have until 8 p.m. Central. So we'll have an hour. And for the first half, we'll give you guys a teach-in on a subject related to Palestine or organizing for Palestine. Today, we're kicking off talking about disrupting Congress at home in your home districts, which is kind of the main purpose of the summer school, but I'll talk a bit more about that in a second. The second half of these courses are going to be how to use the information that we have in the first half to take action to disrupt. And today, Danica and I are going to be walking you through how to put on a teach-in of your own. So just a reminder, please keep yourself muted until it's time to share. Usually in the second half, we'll have opportunities for that and opportunities for questions. But yeah, we're going to be giving you the resources on the topics we present today, so you won't lose this information. And, we really want to make sure that you take it and you use it to be in action in your home, locally, wherever you're at. And we'll also send a follow-up email with this information. So if you don't get it from the chat, don't worry. It's not going to be lost. You'll find a follow-up email in a couple of days. But why a summer school for Gaza? Why are we here today? And it's because it's so important to equip ourselves with strategies on how to inform other people on Palestine and how to use this teaching strategy to be a force for Palestine and to, be disruptive in this way. So, like I said, the focus of this is going to be how to disrupt members of Congress locally, because this is like a very unique opportunity we have this summer to push Congress people from, their constituency in their home state. It just hits so much harder when it's directly coming from constituents. They can't really go around that. These are the people that they're supposed to be listening to, right? And we haven't really had an opportunity like this since Israel's genocide campaign began, because it happened in October. And summer is when most Congress people are home, right? So this is not an opportunity that we want to miss out on. We want to make sure that in every way we can, we're escalating for Gaza this summer, and to do it in a way where we're teaching people. So a lot of these are going to be like how to disrupt using a teach-in. So it's kind of like a double whammy. We're disrupting, but we're also educating folks. And there's just a lot of opportunities for growth and escalation in our movement. So thank you all so much for joining. I see so many introductions in the chat. It's making me so happy that everybody's so engaged. Um, so today we are joined by Motaz Salim and Julia Norman, who are two disruptors, part of our team in DC. They challenge Congress to their face every single day. So there's really no one better to kick us off and to learn from. We're really lucky to have them here to kick off our summer school. They have just so much good information for you guys. So let them give you that great information. Julia and Motaz, please introduce yourselves and take it away.
Hi, everyone. My name is Julia. As Nora just said, I am now the DC coordinator for Code Pink, and I am so excited to be here with all of you to kick off the Summer School for Gaza.
Hi, I'm Matez, also based in DC. Been going to Congress a lot over this past year, and I'm Palestinian myself, so it's very personal. And I feel very privileged that I have been able to live here and like be close to where these people operate, where they do all their warmongering, and being able to disrupt that as much as possible. And today I'm excited to be able to share what we've learned and how to escalate our actions as well.
Yeah, so Taz too has so much expertise in the area of disrupting like within district because he's really been doing that as well the past month. I just want to start us off by saying, why are we focusing on Congress members? Because the theme of today is disruption, but disruption targeted when people are back in district. I think obviously, people on this call are here because you have some sort of sense that we as citizens, our taxpayer dollars are going towards funding this genocide. And I think so often we're really familiar with the fact that quite literally billions upon billions of dollars are being sent to Israel substantially this year on an annual basis of 3.8 million. And we don't even know the number could be, I calculated once, almost 4 billion on its highest end that Biden has been sending in these weapons transfers that are under a certain threshold amount, over 100 over the past 8 months. So we're aware of that, but we also, I think, need to be cognizant that our Congress members pass tons or are trying to pass tons of propaganda bills, things that target nonprofits in higher education that are speaking for Palestinian human rights. They draft letters regularly that are often very in favor of a Zionist agenda and are extremely Islamophobic and anti-Palestinian. So it's really important that we recognize our Congress members are not just vehicles for funding, but are pushing forth legislation that has consequences for anyone who is interested in advocating for Palestine. And I also think it's important to note that while we're familiar with chasing these representatives who do egregious things, or you might see the Code Pink videos where someone like Chuck Fleischman says something super inflammatory, back in the district, this is also an opportunity to go after the people that are maybe more agreeable, like your Joaquin Castros, let's say, and push them to do more because they have so much power they're not tapping into. So wherever you are on the spectrum, in terms of who is representing you, there's a lot of work that we need to tap into. And just looking ahead, we have 1 week in June coming up, the 17th to the 21st. They're supposed to be back in district. In July, the 15th through the 19th, and then almost all of August, they are going to be back in district. So that's a lot of time this summer to target your representatives. And I will just plug that the Congress Gov calendars website, it has the schedule for both House and Senate. We'll send that resource to you, but that's a really good place to just check and know ahead of time, when is my Congress member coming back? Because so often they tell us in DC, are you a constituent? Or do you represent my district? And we do, because we represent everyone here, there's all different pockets, but this is the time where you guys get to go to your representative and say what is on your heart and mind, because they don't represent PACs. They do, that's what they're doing in practice, but who pays them? We pay them. and they're supposed to be representing us. So with that, I will pass off to Taz.
Thank you, Julia. So to sort of expand on what Julia was talking about, at the end of the day, the way that the government and Congress especially is set up is it's supposed to be like the House is always called the people's house. And we don't just take that as sort of like a phrase. It's really something that we want to embody and believe in. And so given that they will be spending most of the summer on vacation back in their locales, it's up to us as a people, not just, us in DC, but also like all across the country, to put pressure on our politicians to make sure that they, one, hear our message, but beyond that, you might be wondering, like, even beyond the bird dogging and things of that sort, what else can be done? So I'm going to sort of be addressing what we've done so far and kind of like what's worked best, and then also expanding later on what else can be done, especially specific to somewhere, where your local congressperson is. So the value in disruption, which is kind of the first thing I'll talk about, is it, one, allows you to publicly shame your congresspeople, which is necessary, especially when they have been almost 9 years funding a genocide in Gaza. And part of that pressure is part of the efficacy of that public shaming is that it places these politicians under scrutiny and puts them in a situation of very high pressure, because the way these Congress members work is they, and I can tell you this from a lot of experience speaking with them, is that they don't really know how to speak to people a lot of the time. They're very much used to being given talking points by their staffers. And that's kind of the power of like disrupting something like an event, is that you sort of put them on the spot where they don't have this moment to sort of bring the team together. Like, how do we approach, what are our talking points? And so it's a way to hold them accountable for their complicity and for their decisions. Another great thing about disruptions is that they shut down sort of this normalized dialogue that occurs in a lot of events and in a lot of situations that these Congress members find themselves in. So, like, for example, some of the disruptions we've done, like a lot of them have been in hearings, which is, I like to call them like warmongering sessions, because that's really what they are. But beyond that, like we've done things, and I've personally done things too, where we've gone to sort of events being held by think tanks or whatever in the city, where they invited some Congress people or like other members of the government, and it's just sort of very like this hyper normalized situation. They're talking about things as if everything is fine, everything is normal, and disruptions in particular can be very powerful at sort of breaking that illusion. And it's very necessary to do that, because the reality is it is an illusion. They try to sort of, it's kind of this psychological process where if everyone is sort of in the same page about like pretending everything is fine, people will just go along with that. So it becomes your job to sort of break that, which can be very uncomfortable. But that is kind of the point. It is going to be uncomfortable. And what that also helps with is, going back to my first point, they can't really go back to their talking points or like meet with the team, and they can't avoid answering questions regarding their complicity. Part of what I want to also talk about with breaking the illusion is that us as like citizens of this country have been sort of instilled with this idea that there is like the government and we are this entirely separate piece, and like we don't really have access to the government, to the Congress members. that is also the part of the illusion that's created. And the reality is these officials are elected by us. No one who's in power in Congress is in power without us, the people, putting them in that spot. So even if it is intimidating at first, and it is very intimidating, it can be, I want everyone to come out of this really, really internalizing and understanding that it is your, not only is it your right, but it is your duty as a citizen to sort of confront these officials, whether it be through disruption, through bird dogging, and like that is, if you really believe that we are in a democracy, which it seems right now to be not entirely the case, we need to force the issue that no, this, if you're going to say this is a democracy, we will, as the people, take hold and take our power back. So going away from disruption, which is like more so in events, in the middle of events, and sort of the public shaming piece, what is bird dogging? I just saw a comment say, what is bird dogging? That is exactly what we're going to go through now. So bird dogging is sort of a strategy that's used by activists, including what we do in Congress here, to repeatedly seek out elected officials, pose specific questions to them, try to get information out of them, or try to get sort of their honest views of what's going on. So in this case, when we bird dog, we usually try to pose questions to them regarding their complicity or responsibility in aiding the genocide in Gaza. And again, the power of this is that they, like, the most effective defense that we've seen from Congress members to this is they will be entirely silent, because they know that anything that they say will be broadcasted online and will be used against them by the public. And so usually when we do bird dogging, it's another way to think about it is you're essentially like trying to confront whoever the politician is in person. You always, always, always want to be recording, always want to be recording. And the reason for this is without a recording, there are cases where they may be a little more honest, or they might change what they say, but the recording ensures that it's pretty much on the record what they've said. And that way you can follow up after the bird dogging by sharing the video, spreading it around, showing people like, look at what they said. And so some tips when you're confronting these politicians is, one, you need to continue to pose your question or whatever thing that you're trying to ask them or try to get out of them. You have to be relentless. I mean relentless in your pursuit, because they will try to deflect. They'll always do a lot of, are you my constituent? Which is really a BS question. They will start repeating Zionist talking points, getting upset. When they get upset, if they do get upset, that is especially, again, why we want to be recording, because that is the piece that you really want to have on record. And the third point I would say is to make sure to let them speak. And this is not always the case, but it depends on sort of what your goal is. So I'll give you an example. Recently, a few friends of mine and I confronted the State Department spokesperson, Matthew Miller. There was no intent to sort of get an answer out of him. We know what his role is, what he believes, and at that point, you sort of just, the goal was just shame him, shame him, shame him. With Congress people, what we want to ideally have as our goal is not just to shame them. If they shame themselves through their response, that's a whole different thing. But ideally, what we want our goal to be is to hear them out, really, is to let them speak and let them say what they really feel. which in most cases is by US and international law illegal, but in a lot of cases will also just reveal to the public that they like just how how complicit in the genocide they are. And that is, we're trying to build this popular sort of dissatisfaction with these politicians. So ideally, we want the goal to be to retrieve information out of them. But, I'll give an example of like, I don't know, a Richie Torres. I think we know how Richie Torres feels. I think Richie Torres is not someone anymore worth really like trying to get answers out of him, because he will just continue to say some completely reckless things and very racist, very like xenophobic, genocidal rhetoric, same as like Brian Mast. So those people, you don't really want to like, if you do, like, I would still suggest that bird dogging them is very important, just because we want to like sort of break their ability to go about their day-to-day life. But at the same time, there are a lot of the politicians that are more so like your Joaquin Castros, for example, or the, like the McGoverns of the world, where we do want to pressure them by forcing them to answer our questions about their complicity in the genocide of Gaza.
Thank you so much, Taz, for giving that really important breakdown about why we need to be putting pressure on these politicians and how it is useful. I know too, I would just like to reiterate, before coming to Congress, the notion of standing up and yelling in a hearing, running up to a member of Congress and asking them a question is not something I could have ever imagined myself doing. I'm extremely non-confrontational. You may not believe that, but that is the case. And so I would just say, the illusion that we put around Congress and these people, the sense that they kind of have power or prowess or what have you, hopefully that's been shattered by now just by seeing the videos. But truly, these are just human beings. And what they're doing is beyond egregious and atrocious. And so I really empower all of you to recognize the authority that you have to use these people who are supposed to represent you and the opportunity to confront them and challenge yourself. But I also recognize that sometimes that isn't the means that people communicate. Maybe you're not comfortable being the person that gets up in the middle of their speaking event or runs up to them. That's why we also need people who record, who organize, who do the logistic work, who get groups together. But there's also other means for disruption. And before, we're going to give you some more information shortly about how to, locate our members of Congress and where to find them. But do note that other forms like sit-ins in district offices are another really useful way to kind of put pressure on your politician when they're home. You have to make an appointment a lot of the times. It's not like in DC where we can just walk in, but you can call that office, see when they're going to be available, or you can go outside the office. And that is something that's really useful. The other thing to know is in that bird dogging interaction, maybe you're not the person who's going to go up and confront them, but if you note, hey, I found out that my representative is speaking at some kind of gala and it's coming up on Friday, let me share this information with other activists in my area and get the word out. And that's a really good way to start building a network for when they're home. So I do just really want to stress that, even if you're not comfortable with this notion of disrupting, there are other means to put pressures by just being present in their spaces, even just being someone who's wearing something for Palestine at an event that they're speaking at, just being present there is pressure, because frankly, so many of them are, as Taz said, they will normalize this issue. They will pretend that nothing is going on and they will go about their business as the business of genocide continues. So it's really, really important to show up in whatever capacity feels comfortable to you. And in terms of speaking of sit-ins, I do want to pass it over to Taz.
Thank you. So I sort of wanted to just expand upon this point, and I'll use this as sort of a segue into escalation. So on one hand, a lot of the information we've relayed to you so far is kind of what we've been doing a lot of. And I will reiterate that it is important work that needs to be done all the time. Like, we really cannot give these politicians a moment of peace, because they are currently aiding and abetting a genocide in Gaza. A lot of you might be wondering, as many people are, given that we're entering month 9, we are in month 9 of the genocide, and we're seeing, continuously every day sort of egregious war crimes being committed against the innocent population in Gaza. We're seeing sort of these mass graves every day being uncovered. It's really become, beyond the pale of what even I, admittedly, as a Palestinian, would have imagined would happen, knowing very well what the Zionist state is capable of. So a lot of what I'm about to say, not all of it, but it involves, to a certain extent, a higher level of risk. And the reason I feel like it's necessary to say is because I feel like myself and a lot of us, I know a lot of people have messaged me personally or talked to me in person and told me that I really want to do more. What else can I do? The reality is, we are limited on one hand, but there are ways we can add pressure. So all that being said, for sit-ins, for example, in a local district office, I'm not sure exactly how the operational hours are or when the office is open, but one thing you could do is a sit-in in an office. I'll start there because that's been done before already. And the risk of that really is differentiated based on your target goal of that action. So if your intent is to just sit in and kind of like this sort of disrupt the operations of that district office for a couple hours, a few hours, and then call it a day, that's fine. I know in the past, people have sort of done a sit-in in an office till close and like sort of forced them, kind of symbolically like stayed there, as in like, we're not going to leave. That will more than likely get you arrested. And so that is sort of where a higher risk thing might come into the picture, which is completely up to you. But that way you really sort of, you're not just like disrupting the politician themselves, but their entire office. You want to take it a step further, or let's say you can't get into the office, you could sort of blockade the entrance. And a blockade doesn't necessarily have to mean like a physical, you're all just standing there in front of the entrance, but rather could be something like a people's press conference. You could just situate yourself in the entrance to the office, and all of this will involve kind of what's called autonomous organizing. You take it upon yourself, you talk to your friends who are aligned, who are willing, who you trust, to come together, create this action, execute the action, and really use it as a way to disrupt the day-to-day proceedings. The really good thing about sort of like a press conference in front of the office would be that you can also get a lot of testimonies from people in the community. If you have Palestinians in the community, if you have veterans, if you have sort of anti-Zionist Jewish individuals, to speak on just how horrible what the Zionist state has been doing is, and to hold that politician accountable. A little more about just the autonomous organizing piece. I think a lot of us sort of look, for example, at Code Pink to plan things, which Code Pink is really great at planning these sort of actions against politicians. But let's say, for example, that you live in a rural area or just any area that may not have a Code Pink chapter. That doesn't mean you're powerless. It's literally, you can, again, just think of it as organizing a birthday party. You can message your friends, get together, people who are trustworthy, who are willing to disrupt events or take this action to disrupt the local office, and plan it together. And keep in mind the risk aspect of it. I highly recommend, like, I know in DC and like in a lot of areas, there are lawyers who will give you advice pro bono. They won't like represent you, but they'll give you advice on making an assessment of risk, a legal risk assessment. And I would recommend that as well, just to sort of ensure your safety and security. Another small piece I'll add, and this is something that kind of several of people have been doing here in the city recently, is you can find where the Congress member lives. So I'm not going to tell you how, because there is no one way how, and like that's a sort of higher security thing. But what I will tell you is a lot of these addresses are publicly available information. It is not illegal at all to sort of seek them out. It's all available publicly. So what the task becomes is you can go online, try to find the address, and what you could do is something like a wake-up call. A lot of members in the community here have been going to different politicians, not politicians, but sort of the like members of the State Department, members of the White House staff, going to their homes either early in the morning or even in the evening to make a lot of noise, disrupt their evening, just shake up their morning. And again, that can be escalated upon if you so choose by perhaps forming, I'm not going to go into detail here because there are many ways this can be done. But what I will say is there are ways to make it to increase the disruption that you cause, essentially. But for example, for something like a wake-up call, you want to go super early in the morning while they're waking up, keep in mind like what the noise ordinance laws are. So, you can't make a lot of noise before 7 a.m. Get there at 7:15, what have you, start making a lot of noise, protest, chant, be loud, disrupt what they wake up and think it's another day where they get to go to work. No, you're going to be met with the people who are extremely, extremely agitated and angry with what you continue to do and continue to be sort of complicit in murdering Palestinians. So those are just some examples. I wish I could say more about like the specific ways to go about things, but that's kind of a security issue that we can't really get into that. But that is your task as within your community to bring people together and figure out how those things can be done.
Thank you so much, Taz. And there's so much to touch up on, but I just briefly, before we wrap up, want to let you know, like, how do I, find these people? They're coming home, but what am I going to do to locate my member of Congress? Well, first, you should subscribe to their email list. And I would also encourage everyone to go on the websites, not just of the representative in your district. So, like, I am from California, the 44th district, and Annette Barragan is my rep. But there are tons of districts within driving distance that I also have access to, and I can go disrupt those officials because they are going to be in my area, and a lot of them are also voting on this money. And if I approach them, they have no idea that I don't actually live within their district. That is the one benefit of gerrymandering. We should also be checking their social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. That is where they are going to be sharing the events that they're participating in, different speaking things. They might be going to, cut a ribbon or something. It doesn't have to just be a town hall. And also call their website. Say, hey, I know that they're coming home for the district break. What can I do to see my congressperson? And they will give you some information. That's what they're supposed to do. That's what they're there for. Also check some holiday and events. A lot of times Congress members will go to specific events in the community. And if they hold any board positions or if they're donors for certain organizations, what have you, whatever their involved in or their key issue is, follow those organizations, and that will hopefully lead you to them. And also, once you educate yourself on where they're going to be, I would just say do a little bit of background research if you can into their legislative history. So we have some of the key, like the Israel Security Supplemental that you guys might be aware of, where they sent the money to Israel, and that would be on the congress.gov website. You can find these things, and I'll share this information with Nora and Danica, and maybe this can go out. But there's some other votes, like the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act, some of these propaganda bills that we should know how our Congress members are voting so we can approach them and address how they are equating anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism, and the fact that that is going to have lasting repercussions as well. There's another resource I want to point everyone to called notmytaxdollars.org. And that's a really good way to kind of relocalize the issue for yourself as well and say, hey, why are you not investing our money in our community? I'm your constituent. Instead, you are using it to perpetuate a genocide in Gaza. And I am not, this is not aligned with my interests. And just as like a final point that I want to emphasize, when you're doing this, this action isn't just directed at the congressperson. Anyone in the periphery who is witnessing you empowered and take that action and hear what you have to say is now being brought into this movement, is now being confronted with perhaps their own silence on this. They might be educated about it for the first time. You never know who your audience is. And so think of every opportunity to approach a Congress member to also think about how many people are going to see this and be inspired, and how wide you can share that message, especially when it's recorded and then it goes up on social media. That's why a lot of us have all come together, because Code Pink has such a network, and you can create that yourself. And so I just encourage you all to really go after your Congress people when they are home in the district in these next few months.
Thank you so much, Montez and Julia. That was such beneficial information, and you guys truly are the best people to hear it from. So we really, really appreciate it. Just for a quick sec before Danica and I give the teaching on teachings, so you guys can do what Montez and Julia do in DC in your home locally. Danica is just going to let everybody know where we have Code Pink chapters, so you guys can kind of think like, is this something I'm going to be doing with a chapter? Should I, what's your organizing going to be looking like?
Thank you. Yeah, if you are not in a Code Pink chapter, please join one. We would be so happy to have you. And that's the best way to get organized, is to join an organization. If we don't have a chapter where you are, we can start one with you. Grace just sent a link in the chat. It's the Peacemaker link, but I'm going to read out where we have chapters really quickly. Phoenix, Arizona, Coachella Valley, California, the Bay Area, California, San Diego, California, Los Angeles, California, Central Coast, the anti-war coalition that Code Pink's in California, that's in Santa Barbara, Southeast Los Angeles, San Pedro, California, Inland Empire, California, Berkeley, California, Reno, Nevada, Seattle, Washington, Salt Lake City, Utah, Denver, Colorado, Washington, D.C., South Florida, Chicago, Illinois, Western Massachusetts, River Valley, Massachusetts. Michigan is a statewide chapter, so I sent that to a couple people in the chat directly. Rochester, Minnesota, Fargo, Moorhead, Fargo, North Dakota, Moorhead, Minnesota. They're right next to each other. Minot, North Dakota, Grand Forks, North Dakota, New York City. Upper Hudson Valley, New York, Long Island, New York, Miami Valley, Ohio, Chattanooga, Tennessee, Dallas, Texas, Madison, Wisconsin, Canada, and then Ireland. I think I hit all of them.
Yes, thank you so much, Danica, and thank you again to Julia and Montez, not just like for the teaching, but for what you guys have been doing and all your work. It's like doesn't go unnoticed, honestly. Okay, so our teaching on teachings. What is a teaching? Why do a teaching? Essentially a teach-in is a series of lectures or, one lecture with discussions on a certain subject of public interest, which is focused on taking action. So a key part of your teach-in is you're not just sitting there talking to people, educating them. There's a point where, you want people to take action. And this is a way to empower people to have the information they need to take action. Everything that me and Danica are about to say is going to be sent to you guys, so don't worry if you miss something. Of course, if you want to take your own notes, go ahead. And with those resources, we're going to be sending a sample teaching agenda from the Black Alliance for Peace. So you guys will also have, a little like structure of how your teaching should go, as an example.
Hi y'all. Sorry, I was responding to messages, and I'll reiterate it. And I put it in the chat. If you're in the Midwest and you want to start a chapter, you email me, Danica@codepink.org, and I put this all in the chat. We have an organizer for the South, East Coast, and West Coast. So just email whoever, even if there's already a chapter and you want to get plugged into it, just email the regional person. And then I also oversee the Canada and Ireland chapters. So happy to connect you to those folks as well. All right. So this is just a teaching on teachings, like Noor said. Um, and sometimes if you haven't planned an action like this, it can kind of be hard to just think of the first steps. So we are going to help y'all do that. So we always start by like forming a planning committee. If you're in a Code Pink chapter, that's your committee. Who's planning? What group do you have to get together for this? Who in your group would be a good speaker or facilitator? Who's a good researcher to get all the info together? And throughout the summer school, we'll also be compiling info for you that you can just take to use for the teach-in. So we'll have the first one available at the next gathering. But for now, you can go to codepink.org/Palestine. You could look at our BDS toolkit. We have so many different packets of information on our website. Just look all over and pick whatever you think would be useful for your community. There's a bunch of information on our website. Who could be a moderator, timekeeper, person to take pictures and videos, also super important. And then also you have to locate your congressperson's office in your district. If you are going to target one of your senators, they usually have offices in every major city in your state. And then also if in Chicago, like my representative, Mike Quigley in Chicago, he has an office in the city and then one out in the suburbs, where he represents some of the suburbs of Chicago. So there's always multiple. So find one that would work best for you and your group. And then you want to scope it out. What does it look like? We were going to do a teach-in at Mike Quigley's office, so we had to go look at it, and we found out that it's like on the third floor of a building and super closed off, and there's a buzzer. You can only get inside if you have an appointment. So we found out that really valuable information, like we can't just go and show up. So always go, suss it out. Is there space on the sidewalk where you can have your teach-in outside if you need to? Can you make an appointment easily? Is it an office where you can just walk in? There are some of those still left around. You'd hope our congresspeople would be more accessible to us, but they're not. So you could talk to their staffers, find out when the office is open, and get any upcoming events that your congressperson might be attending. For example, like it's summer, they're at farmers markets. They're like going to be like mingling with their constituents at farmers markets. If you have like any neighborhood block parties that are sponsored by your city or suburb, like they will be at those things over the summer, especially in August. So that's a great place to look. And if you can't get into the building, find a spot directly outside. Like if you don't think you're going to have a huge group, or if you think you could fit the group that you have out on the sidewalk, that's fine. Or a park nearby, for example, and look for accessible spaces. And then choose a focused topic and create an agenda. Just some examples: UNRWA funding. We have a bunch of info about UNRWA on our website. Weapons manufacturers, we have like a whole campaign. You can find so much information on Codepink's website about weapons companies. APAC funding, we're putting up a resource about that pretty soon. Ecocide, you could go to codepink.org/WING, wing, war is not green. Human rights abuses, international law, history of apartheid, anything Palestine related. And come up with your objectives. What should people walk away with? What do you want people like leaving that teach-in with? And you want to prepare a presentation. I suggest typically when I have my chapters working on these kinds of things, having sort of a set educational portion and then having a discussion portion. Sort of like working through these hard topics together is like always something that gets people who are there for the first time involved. It gives them a stake in what you're doing, and they'll come to the next thing. So I would suggest having that. Encourage participation, like I said. consider interpreters if you think there would be a language barrier, and then end with an action item. Never forget to end whatever you're doing with an action item. What's an action item? It could be coming to the protest that is happening in our city next Sunday, or it could be we're gonna have a Code Pink meeting for our chapter in a couple days. Can you meet us at this coffee shop and come to the meeting? It could be to sign a petition. It could be to call that congressperson. We would have protests outside of my congressperson's office every single day until he did what we wanted him to do, which was sign on to Medicare for all. And we ended every single protest outside by calling his office, everyone there. We made everyone call his office and leave a message. That could be your action item. Just always have the next thing that people are going to do. Because people want to take what they learn and do something with it. Create lots of visuals. If you just Google Code Pink and you look at images, you tap the images button, you could see Code Pink visuals. That's sort of our thing. So check out our TikTok, check out our Instagram. Like we have so many visuals at everything. It's important for getting people's attention. You're having these events in public spaces, people will walk by and wonder what you're doing. We have, been an organization this long by being disarming and being like colorful and beautiful and having our message of peace really really bright and out there for people who are walking by and joining us. So always create visuals and then do outreach, put up flyers for the events, for the teach-ins that you're having in coffee shops, flyer outside of a train station, invite people to come to the teach-in. Do outreach. Don't skip outreach. We can never skip outreach. The whole point of doing any of this is to bring more people in. There's a lot more people to be brought in than you think. A lot of people are good people who have hearts and give a crap about other human beings, and they want to be brought in and be involved in this kind of thing. And then the last thing is submit the local support form that Grace can probably put the link in the chat for, or I can. This helps us at Code Pink support you. If you are a chapter leader or if you're part of a chapter, we can help you get a press release out. We can just check in with you to make sure you have all the visuals you need. Make sure that, we're getting pictures and videos for Instagram so we can report back. And bring your messages that you are taking directly to your congressperson to the halls of Congress. Like we are in Congress. If you go the week it's coming up soon that Julia mentioned, we can bring that message directly to your member of Congress. So when they ask Julia, are you a constituent? She could say no, but this person is, and they were outside your office last week. So please don't skip like taking videos, taking pictures. You can look at Code Pink's TikTok and see how like we record ourselves at things explaining what we're doing. That's a super, super good communication tool. So please don't skip that. Please fill out the local support form and we can give you everything you need. Yeah. Is that my portion, Noor? Is there anything else?
Yes, perfect. Thank you so much, Danica. So what Danica went over is pretty much everything you should be doing before the teach-in happens. Like these are all boxes you want to check off while planning the teach-in, things you want to make sure you do before the teach-in happens. And also just a quick note, if you do a teach-in on like a Palestine 101, something like that, we already have a teach-in for that made. We'll send it out as a resource. And then also if you want to see, there's a video of that Palestine 101 that I'm giving on our YouTube. So if you go to Code Pink's YouTube, you can watch that if you guys like want any tips. Because you don't always say like exactly like what's on your slides. So we'll send that out to you guys. Make sure you see it. I will say it's always great to be like super focused and like maybe bring up something specific to your congressperson, maybe something that they engaged with recently, not just a Palestine 101. So if you can do that, I definitely encourage it. Okay, so during your teach-in, something super important is that you want to be very clear in your message. Like state exactly what you're there for, state exactly the message that you're trying to get across, and be confident. People will respond well to this confidence. And also, I think people, especially if it's your first time doing something like this, you can be intimidated. That makes a lot of sense. But just remind yourself that just being the person giving the teach-in kind of puts you in this like authority position and people will respond to that. So step into that power. You do have that power, and be confident because that will really help get your message across. And like Danica said, like be visible, wear pink, you know, that's our thing, code pink. It brings people in, it gets people to like notice what's going on, bring signs, bring creative visuals. Like Danica said, look up code pink images. We even have like flyers on our website. All this will be sent to you guys, so not a problem at all to find. And also encourage participation within the people who are coming to the teach-in. A lot of times, if like people are throwing information at you, you might feel this way right now. You might get a little bored. You want to be involved. I see a lot of people are active in the chat, which I think is great, you know, because people want to respond to things. They want to respond to what they're being told. And it's also very empowering for them to be part of the teach-in. It's meant to be something very collective. So if you can have time for discussion, if you can have maybe something for people to share notes, definitely I encourage that. Also, just in any organizing, but for these teach-ins specifically, be flexible, be aware of your surroundings. Things like this could be, I guess, unexpected at times. You know, you don't know what kind of maybe disruption you're going to be confronted with. Maybe you were planning on being inside the office, but when you get there, you're not actually able to. Always have a plan B. Never be too like married to the plan that you make, because you want to be open. You want to like have like an idea of like maybe something might happen where I need to be flexible, and that's always just a great quality to have, to be adaptable in these actions. Always record, just for so many reasons, so we can uplift the action, so you know if anything happens, everything is on record. And also to save the teach-in as a resource. Once you give the teach-in, if it's recorded, now we have a resource that we can share with people, or you know you can use in future actions, or you know maybe the people there want to go over the information that you shared. And always be passionate in your delivery. This kind of goes in with the confidence thing. And when you present yourself in this way, people will listen to you. There's oftentimes even in Congress where like staffers will agree, they'll listen because of the delivery, you know, of these teach-ins, and they might even share what you've said. They might pass it on to that congressperson. And you know, you might bring in the people around too if your teaching is happening outside. So you always want to kind of appear on this like passionate front, on this front of like empowering yourself and therefore empowering the people around you. So those are all like, you know, during the teach-in, just things to remember. After the teach-in, there's still like a couple follow-up tasks that you want to do. Debrief with the planning team, you know, go over what went well, what didn't go well, what should we plan better for next time? You know, do we feel like our message was received to our audience? You know, what type of materials do we need to follow up with our audience? And, you know, what can we do better next time? So kind of just like, you know, have a little debrief session, just talk about how the teaching went and use that information to be even stronger next time. And then just a few like general reminders when it comes to these teach-ins or any actions you do. Do your best to know like your local law. I wish we can give like a full like know your rights for every state, but the thing is that it just like differs so much. Or it differs enough to where it matters. So if you can acquaint yourself as best as you can with your local law regarding recording protests, disruptions, being on Capitol property, etc., all these things that you might be doing. And then if you connect with your local National Lawyers Guild chapter, they can even have a legal observer on site to kind of just, you know, be this third party observer and have, you know, another person on record witnessing what's happening at your teach-in, just in case you need that in the future. Hopefully, none of you will need that. So also just like always keep recording, even if people tell you to stop, unless you're going to be arrested for continuing to record. It's super important to just make sure you have everything on record. Like this is going to be kind of like your safety net if you need it. And if you can record audio, if you can't record video, then stick to the audio. But again, like just know your local consent laws when it comes to recording. A lot of times if it's in public, it should be okay. But like I said, please double check. And then also consider sending out like a post-action press release by submitting the local support form Danica was talking about. And then we can get like maybe a bit of press around what happened, generate a little bit of buzz. Maybe your congressperson is like one of the more famous ones because, you know, sometimes they really feel like they're celebrities. But then that might be an opportunity for you to get more press, get free clout off your congressperson, and get our message out there. And then if you can provide water and maybe like little snacks, it's just like a nice thing to include to like enrich people and connect with all the members of your community. And it's just like it's just a nice little addition to a teach-in. But that's pretty much the teaching on teach-ins. We're just a couple minutes left. So maybe we can take like one or two questions. I'm also going to put my email in the chat, noor@codepink.org. If you guys have any specific questions, feel free to email me and I'll respond because we're definitely just not going to be able to get through all of them right now. It looks like there were a lot of responses in the chat, which is great. If you guys could leave your questions in the chat, that would be great. Somebody was asking about notes. Yes, we're going to be sending all these resources out to you. Somebody said, do you have any tips for confronting liberal House candidates who are still silent on or complicit in Gaza, but are running to unseat objectively worse MAGA incumbents? The type vote blue no matter who types would endorse. Yeah, I think that as like with anybody, I would just challenge them on what the reality of what actually is happening is, whether they're like liberal or not, the reality of the situation is still true, right? And we should still hold people to the standards that we want to see. And, you know, let them know that we're not going to accept a lower standard just because the pool is so low, right? You know, we should still be pushing for our standards to be met. And I think that's like, you know, bring it back to the material reality of what's happening. And usually when you do that, they really have no choice but to engage with, you know, real life, what's actually happening. Okay, so it's 8 o'clock. So unfortunately, I think that if anybody has any questions, you're gonna have to send them over email, but don't worry. I mean, we're literally here to make sure your actions go well. So if you have any questions, we will most definitely respond and give you all the help you need. Yeah, so just thank you guys so much for joining today. This was our first session of the Gaza Summer School, and just seeing all you being so like excited in the chat and the amount of people who came is so heartwarming. I'm Palestinian myself, and I literally have never had a point in my life where like this many people were so open to not just like learning about Palestine, but taking action because they actually care like for themselves and they care about a better world. So I really love seeing all of you guys. And you know, just dedicating your summer to what needs to be done. Don't forget, you're going to receive an email with all the information, like I've said many times. So you will get everything that we said and you will have everything you need. And if you don't, reach out. We'll make sure you do, and we'll make sure you're successful because you guys are great. And yeah, we want to set you up for success. So our next session is going to be on Monday, June 17th at 7 p.m. Central Time. That's going to be about building resistance by cultivating community, and it's going to be led by Jody Evans, our co-founder, and Emily Franco, who's also a Code Pink staff member. They're going to be talking about the local peace economy. What is it? How do we teach the local peace economy? You're not going to know unless you come, June 17th, 7 p.m. Central. Thank you guys again. Hope to see you there.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Just
you.
See you in 2 weeks. Yeah, go
Thank
ahead.
you.
Yes, you do district
Can't wait to
action.
see you guys all summer.
If you
Thank you.
reach out to DC, we want to help you. Reach out if you're not getting in contact with your district reps. We want to advocate on your behalf.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julia.
This is gonna
And
be
look out for a Zoom link that'll go up on our events page with our local chapters and the DC team to start coordinating some actions together all over the country too. I think that's a project we're going to start working on. So please keep checking our Code Pink events page for stuff near you and virtual things that you can come to.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.